For those of you not familiar with what the term vegan means, it means someone who is a vegetarian, of course, but also doesn't have dairy. Eggs, of course. In India, vegetarian in any way includes eggs, but also someone who doesn't have dairy products. And even some people won't use honey or silk or means anything that comes from an animal. But I think he was specifically referring to the dairy aspect. And he said, in India, it's the easiest country to be a vegetarian in, but it's the hardest to be a vegan. And in the West, there's such a rise of veganism happening. And in India, what's going on? So I love this question because I was a vegan before I moved to India. And am a vegan outside of this ashram or anywhere where we happen to be where I know exactly where the milk comes from. So in India, there are people who keep their own cows. In their house, I'm happy to drink the milk. But if I don't know directly, exactly, immediately where that milk is coming from, I'm vegan in India as well. Here's the situation. The situation is that in Indian culture, in traditional Indian culture, not in the way that multinationals have taken over everything and everything's become a corporate, but in traditional Indian culture, the cow is holy. For a lot of reasons, we won't go into all of them, but the cow is considered the mother. And the milk from the cow is considered nectar. Now, in a traditional farm, when a cow is milked, when the calf drinks from the cow, there's actually milk left over after the calf drinks. And there's plenty of milk left for the people whose farm it may be to drink. Now there's health reasons that people say we should not drink milk that I'm not going to go into because I've actually heard a lot of arguments on both sides. And the only point I will make on that is that the most convincing argument that I've heard has to do with the distinction between A1 and A2 types of milk and the distinction between typically what we think of as desi cow, which is the cows with the humps, the milk of which is actually nectar and chemically very, very different from the non-desi cows that don't have the hump, where the milk is actually not good for your health. That's the extent of what I'm convinced by in that which I've read about the inherent health or unhealth of organic, happily raised, at home, in your farm cows. Assuming there's not a factory nearby and they're not, eating food laden with dioxin and all sorts of other toxins. So the cow is holy. The milk is what's given freely by the cow. After the calves drink plenty of milk, the culture is one. Ayurveda is a science that has come up with the teaching of milk as being nectar in its variety of forms, whether it's ghee, whether it's yogurt, whether it's buttermilk, whatever it may be. This is seen as nectar. And this isn't, by the way, just traditional Indian culture. This is a lot of traditional cultures in various parts of the world. Now, what has happened over the last 100-ish years is cattle farming has become a business. It's become an industry, just like anything. And so now, instead of cows being kept in a goshala with their babies and the calves drink first and what's left you keep, and the cows only give milk when they're pregnant naturally with the bull on the farm, and they roam around and they eat grass, and rather than that, and then of course when they stop giving milk, they're kept. Rather than that, what's happened is it has become simply a factory, And cows are born and raised to give milk, which means that when they're pregnant, because that's actually why they give milk, is to feed their babies. When they give birth, well, a baby girl could theoretically be a dairy cow. A baby boy cannot. He is sent off to become veal. In most of the dairy farms, actually, sadly, the girls aren't even kept. It's become such an industry that they don't want to waste the money it costs to feed that cow for the 2 or 3 or 4 years it takes until she'll start being able to get pregnant and lactate. They'd much rather just sell both genders of babies off to becoming veal or beef and buy new cows when they need them. So the industry has become an industry of violence. It's become an industry of sickness. The cows are pumped full of all kinds of steroids and antibiotics and whatnot. They are kept in chains. I mean, you don't need me to tell you the horror of it. If you're a vegan walking into this, you know that. The issue in India is because the cow is holy, until and unless we educate people on really what's going on at the vast majority of milk production places in this country, not all of them by any means, there is thankfully still enough reverence for the cow, enough people who are still in line with that their cows are not being killed when they stop giving milk, that the babies are not being sent off to become beef. That does still exist, thank God. But nonetheless, the vast majority of particularly commercial dairies are pretty much what they are in the West, which is houses full of antibiotics and hormones and artificial insemination and violence. But Indians need to be more and more educated about this. It's a topic I speak about as frequently as I can. It comes up a lot, of course, because in people's house, when you don't drink milk, people want to know why. And so it's a nice opportunity to talk about it. I believe that Indians will slowly come around. But remember, the culture of worshiping the cow, the culture of having milk as nectar has been around a lot longer than industrial dairy production has been in India. My guess is, I haven't done the research, but my guess is it's been barely a few decades here. It's probably been about 100 years abroad, but I'd say in India we're looking at really a few decades. And so I think people just don't know, which is why education is so important. And these days, when you look at things like WhatsApp, that's just literally sucking people's lives. I mean, wherever you go, everybody's just, on their phone. But it actually can be used for beneficial purposes, one being to share news like this. You get a video of what goes on in slaughterhouses in India, send that around on WhatsApp, that'll go viral. And then you've used a tool that normally just saps our time into actually something being beneficial. So I have faith that either more and more people will be vegan, or there will be a massive clamp down on the dairy industry.